Good morning. It's Bernard Nomberg with another weekly episode of NOMBERG LAW Live, and I got my buddy Christopher Burrell here. Good morning, Chris.
Morning, Bernard. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Hope you're doing well, and I appreciate you joining me.
No problem.
We've got another law topic we're going to talk about today that's pretty important for anybody who thinks about driving, who likes to drive, wants to drive, has a license, lost a license. We're talking about driver's licenses. And Chris here has a real niche in the law that not many lawyers know, not many lawyers deal with, but it's a very important part of the law. And Chris, before we get into this area, let's talk about you. Let's talk about Mr. Burrell and McCants. If you would introduce yourself a little bit.
Well, good morning, Birmingham. My name is Chris Burrell. I'm a partner in the firm of Burrell McCants. Burrell McCants is my partner. I'm from Birmingham, grew up in Birmingham, lived here pretty much my whole life. Attended West End High School. After West End, I went to the University of North Alabama, and then from there, I got my law degree from Birmingham School of Law. I've been in practice here for about the past 8 years now.
Very good, very good. And tell us, Chris, what you guys at Burrell and McCants, what do y'all handle? What kind of work?
At Burrell and McCants, we call ourselves justice lawyers, and the reason for that is because we're looking for justice for our clients. And justice can come in many forms. We primarily handle criminal defense, but we also do civil rights and employment discrimination cases.
Okay. Well, very good. All very important areas of the law, and I appreciate that you guys handle those topics. Guys, again, if you're just joining us, we appreciate you stopping in for a few minutes. We're talking about an important topic to all folks in Alabama and other states who drive. We're talking about driver's licenses, and it's not an absolute right. It's a privilege to own a driver's license and to maintain one. And if you've got questions for Chris as we're going through here, please just dump them in the comments section. We'll see them. Hopefully, Chris will be able to answer them either while we're live or afterward, and we'll also put in the comment section how to get in touch with Chris after the fact. Chris, let's get into that. Let's talk about driver's licenses.
Okay.
And if my two daughters who now have had their licenses for several years are indicative of the general population about how quickly they want their permit and how quickly they want to get their license, I can understand on the other end of it once you get that license, but the bad part about if you lose or have your license suspended, how devastating that can be.
Oh, absolutely. And in the state of Alabama, there are a number of reasons that your license can be suspended. It can be a missed court date. It can be too many tickets, what we call the accumulation of points. It can even be for for child support. So people don't realize that there are a number of reasons that your license can be suspended. And you have to really be careful about making sure you attend your court dates and things along those lines, because most people that we encounter don't even know that their license has been suspended. So that's a huge deal.
How would one know? How are people typically told or informed if their license is either suspended or taken away?
You should receive a notification from the Department of Public Safety, or it was formerly the Department of Public Safety. It's now the ALEA, Alabama Law Enforcement Agency. You should receive a notification from them. Unfortunately, a lot of times people move, things get lost in the mail. We don't have a reliable electronic system such as email or mass notifications and things along those lines. So people oftentimes do not know that their license has been suspended. And unfortunately, they find out when they've been pulled over, and an officer comes back and tells them, hey, your license has been suspended. I'm going to give you a ticket for driving with a suspended license or driving with a revoked license, things along those lines. So that's usually how most people find out.
So it could be completely unrelated to the fact that you have your license suspended, that's how you end up finding out. It's part of something else that may be
Absolutely.
occurring.
Yeah, the scenario that I've seen so many times is, for instance, somebody's going to a Braves game in the spring. They get a ticket in one of the eastern counties. They forget about it. They don't come back to court.
Right.
And then in the fall, they're going down to Tuscaloosa for a Bama game or something along those lines. And then they get pulled over. And the officer comes back and tells them, hey, your license is suspended. And then all of a sudden they remember, oh, yeah, I forgot this past summer I got a ticket in Anniston or something like that. That's a very common scenario.
And they may not be making their way to the ball game as a result.
Absolutely.
Because that could lead to being arrested?
Absolutely. If you get pulled over and you're arrested, if you get pulled over and your license is suspended, there's called a safe streets law, where the officers are required to
remove you?
Yeah, to remove you from the vehicle, but
Wow.
also to impound the vehicle. So unless there's a licensed driver there, your vehicle may be impounded as well. And as Bernard was saying, you may not make it to the game.
Oh, that'd be a rough day for somebody who had some expensive tickets.
Absolutely.
Guys, thank you for tuning in with us. I'm talking to Christopher Burrell here with Burrell and McCants Law Firm in Birmingham. We're talking about driver's licenses, what happens if you lose your license, have it suspended. Please put some questions in there if you have. We've got one from Wailing Miles. How will a DUI affect your driver's license? Great question. Chris?
DUI, driving under the influence. And what that means is driving under the influence of drugs and or alcohol. It's illegal to do that. In the state of Alabama, if you have above a 0.08 blood alcohol level, and what that means is you've had a couple of drinks and that it is affecting your ability to safely operate a motor vehicle, you can be charged with DUI, driving under the influence. The same can be true for if you're driving under the influence of prescription drugs, or even if you have not had enough sleep. That can be, driving under the influence as well. Yeah, exactly. So anything that affects your ability to safely operate a motor vehicle. A DUI can be devastating for an individual because, one, there's an automatic license suspension that goes along with that. Secondly, as a matter of fact, just recently, the state of Alabama has passed a new law where for a first-time DUI, you can be required to have what's called an ignition interlock device. What that is a device that is installed in your vehicle. It's not cheap to install, but before you can even turn on your vehicle, you have to blow into that device to make sure that you don't have alcohol in your system before you can even start your car.
Wow.
So just that in itself, the suspension plus the ignition interlock, those can be devastating criteria for someone to have to contend with in the event that they get a DUI. So DUIs are very serious, and that's why it requires that you have a very skilled lawyer who's experienced with handling those types of cases so that you can get a good outcome.
Not to mention what it does to your checkbook.
Oh, absolutely.
Having to hire an experienced attorney like yourself.
Absolutely.
The court costs involved. I mean, I'm envisioning tens of thousands of dollars potentially.
Potentially. Because the thing is, having your driver's license can affect different people in certain ways. I mean, not everybody's going to be able to, have a spouse or a child or whatever drive them around, while they're serving the suspension. And as I mentioned before, driving while suspended is one of those cases that can lead to an additional suspension, additional fines, possibly jail time. So, the DUI can be, very catastrophic almost.
Absolutely,
but it can also be expensive as well.
Not just in the pocketbook from money going out, but affecting your ability to get to work to earn the money that you needed.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the catch-22. I mean, we live in a city that it's a very wide-ranging city. I mean, people oftentimes live in the suburbs, work in the city, or vice versa, and they need to be able to get around. So when you're put in one of those positions, what do you do? When you're forced with the choice of having to drive to do the things you need to do.
Sure. Chris, talk to us a little bit about, you can get a permit still at age 15, can't you?
Yes.
And I know the laws have changed in the last several years about do we have the graduated license?
Yes, there is a graduated license now. Now, kids, it's very important. This is summertime. Everybody's taking their driving lessons. They want to go and get their permits and their driver's licenses and things along those lines. It's very important that you understand that, first and foremost, you have to be enrolled in school in order to do that. If you're under the age of 16, you have to show that you're actually enrolled in school before you can even get your driver's license. So that's one of the things that's important. Secondly, whenever you get the permit, the only thing that does is that permits you to drive a vehicle with a licensed driver in the vehicle with you. It's not a driver's license. You can't just drive, on your own. It does what it says it does. It permits you to drive with a licensed driver. And then, of course, once you reach the age of 16, you can get your driver's license at that point.
And are there current laws, Chris, and forgive me for not knowing this, about times of the day, the number of people depending on your age once
Yes.
you've gotten your license?
Yes, yeah. There are certain restrictions even once you get the license, because as we said before, it's kind of a graduated process. You don't just get free reign to do whatever you want to do. Now, honestly, I'll have to admit I do need to check the parameters, but
Sure.
there are certain restrictions on what time of day. You know, well, I'm sorry, like more or less a curfew,
Right,
in which
right.
A permitted driver or a young driver can actually operate a vehicle. There are also restrictions on how many people can be in the vehicle with them at that time, because unfortunately, you know, at that age they may not be mature enough to handle
Sure.
driving safely, operating a vehicle, and also having their friends in the car, you know, playing music, being distracted by other things. So,
Sure.
yeah, there are certain restrictions that are still placed on permits and young drivers.
It just seems that regardless of your age, common sense should rule the moment, but that doesn't always play.
Yeah, that's true. You know, and parents or instructors, they often try to, you know, instill certain good driving habits, but unfortunately, when kids are not with their parents, you know, they
That's
may
right,
still do
that's
some
right.
things that aren't necessarily safe or are not the best decisions. So,
Freedom,
yeah.
baby.
Yeah, it takes some maturity to,
It,
you know,
it
to
does.
safely operate a
It
vehicle.
does. Chris, we got a couple other questions. Thank you guys for submitting them. Here's one from Cece. Can kids with a permit drive with any licensed driver, or do the licensed driver have to be of a certain age?
Yeah, and that actually goes back to what we were talking about the graduated driver's license. They can drive with a licensed driver. However, two 16-year-olds can't operate a vehicle together,
Right,
because
right.
it kind of defeats the purpose of having someone older and more mature. But it has to be if it's going to be a 16-year-old, they typically, if I'm not mistaken, it has to be someone 18 or older
Okay.
who has a driver's license.
Okay.
It can't be two people who are, you know, basically newbies or just starting out. It has to be someone that's a
Gotcha.
little bit older.
All right, here's somebody you might know is Robin Burrell. Does that ring a bell?
That name definitely rings a
She
bell.
asks, can your driver's license be suspended for reasons other than traffic violations? And I think you hit on that a little bit earlier.
Yeah, we did. That's a great question. In Alabama, there are about 6 or 7 different reasons that your license can be suspended. Okay, the most common one is tickets. You know, you get a number of tickets.
Sure.
Each one of those tickets carries points with it. And after you get 12 points within a 2-year period, your license can be suspended. Well, the second reason can be missing a court date, what's called failure to appear. Your license can be suspended for that. This is one that a lot of people don't really realize, but if you have an accident, in the state of Alabama, everyone is required to have insurance on their vehicle. You're required to have a minimum amount of coverage
Sure.
for your vehicle. So if you have an accident and you don't have insurance on your vehicle, your license can be suspended based on the damage that was caused. And unfortunately, even if the accident is not your fault, they can still suspend your license, because if you don't have insurance, there's nothing to cover the damages that may be attributed to you.
Go ahead, Chris.
And of course, the fourth reason is child support. If you are tasked with paying child support, and that can be a mother or father, if that person has an order against them to pay child support and they don't pay that child support, their license can be suspended for that reason as well.
Meaning they're in arrears and the court is aware of what's going on.
Absolutely.
And that they're behind. Boy, that creates a double problem. If you don't have your license and you can't get to where you got to be to earn the money
Absolutely.
to pay for the support.
Exactly.
Chris, I want to ask, we keep mentioning the term suspended license. What does that mean?
A suspended license means that you have, that the state has taken away your right or your privilege to drive a car for a certain period of time. Typically, suspensions are for a certain or a specified period of time. It can be anywhere from 90 days all the way up to 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
Anything beyond that is typically what's called revoked status. And what that means is the state has taken away your ability to operate a car under any circumstances.
And if you have a suspended license, are you going back to having to now go back to court to earn that to have it lifted? Or what's the process?
Well, it depends on what the suspension is. Like I said before, the suspension is usually for a specified period of time. There are certain suspensions that come along with, for instance, the accumulation of points.
Sure.
And what we've been able to do in those situations are we have had to go to court and we've fought to get the ticket that caused the suspension overturned. Once we do that, then obviously that reduces the amount of time for the actual suspension itself.
Okay.
So that's one of the ways. Secondly, you can ride out the suspension, and basically what that means is you serve whatever the duration of that suspension is. And thirdly, we basically fix whatever issue that caused the suspension in the first place.
I see.
As I said before, it could be child support, it could be an accident, and in those situations, what we do is we work out a settlement, and then we file an agreement with the court, and then the court reinstates the person's license.
I see. So all of this is court time. All of this is paying for an attorney. All of this is time and expense once you have your license suspended or revoked. Chris, we've got another question that came in. Can you help someone get their CDL license back? And let's define what a CDL is first.
A CDL is a commercial driver's license. Now, basically, that's an extra endorsement beyond just the ability to operate a passenger vehicle. Okay, if you think about cars or trucks or vans and things along those lines, those basically require the same skill set.
Sure.
However, with CDL, it's a bit different. It's a commercial driver's license, so you have to be able to operate a bus. You have to be able to operate an 18-wheeler. That requires a completely different set of skills as far as driving and things along those lines. Typically, if your driver's license is suspended, then your CDL is going to be suspended as well. Because, I mean, if you can't drive a car, then certainly you can't drive a bus or an 18-wheeler. So we can definitely help people with their CDLs as well. Another thing that people need to be aware of is typically your CDL is tied directly to your job. I mean, Bernard, you and I are lawyers, so I mean, if we didn't have a valid driver's license, we could still come to work or come to court, get somebody to drive us or whatever the case may be. However, with the CDL, you have to be able to operate. I mean, the reason for having the CDL is to be able to operate whatever vehicle you're operating, the 18-wheeler or the bus or whatever the case may be. So you have to have that in order to have your job. And so that's why it becomes even more important.
It's your lifeline.
Exactly.
It's your economic lifeline.
It's an absolute lifeline. And beyond that, most times the CDL requirements are even stricter because think about it. We got 2-ton vehicles on the road. We want those people to be really extra safe as far as what they're doing versus just everyday people who are driving regular cars.
Well, sure. Thank you for joining us. If you're just stopping in, I'm with Christopher Burrell with Burrell McCants Law Firm here in Birmingham. Chris is an expert on helping folks navigate that very difficult world when you have your license, your driver's license or CDL suspended or revoked. Chris has really niched down in that area. His firm does other things, but Chris is the man to go to if you happen to be in a world of hurt and not have a driver's license. If you got any questions or comments, please dump them into the comment section here. When we're finished in a few minutes, we'll put all of Chris's contact information so you'll be able to get in touch with him later on. Chris, I want to kind of shift a little bit into another area. When a person gets older, is there a requirement or a law at a certain age where you have to be retested?
At the present time, there's no actual law where you have to be retested. However, one of the things that can cause suspension is your medical history and the ability to safely operate a vehicle. We have had individuals in the past where their doctor may have sent in information to ALEA saying that the person's vision was declining, or we've had individuals who had medical conditions that cause fainting spells, things along those lines. We have been able to get medical records and actually have hearings to get their license reinstated. So more directly to your question, there is no law where you have to be retested after a certain point. But there are additional factors such as your age or your ability to safely operate a vehicle in which a person's license can be suspended or canceled, or there can be restrictions placed on them.
Because it truly is. It's a privilege to have a license, and you have to follow the criteria that the state sets out. It's not just a right just because you turn 15 or 16 and mom and dad said you can start driving. That doesn't mean the state of Alabama says you can start driving. Chris, have you had any experience dealing with any of I don't know if schools still implement any type of driving programs or if they're now privatized, and there are I know my daughters went through a couple of safety defensive driving courses, and it helps a little bit with the insurance. Do you guys ever deal in that world?
Yeah, honestly, I can't say at this point that that there are still driving courses that are offered in schools. I hope that they are, because that's actually one of the things that I did, and I think that it helped me to become a better and a safer driver.
I remember doing it in high school and summer school.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if that's still in schools, but that is something I will check into. But I know that there are a number of private driving schools. There are companies or individuals who provide driving lessons for teenagers and adults. I've actually looked into some of those recently for one of my own family members. But yeah, there are still companies that do that. Also, once you get your license, it is good to proactively take a defensive driving course. And again, I've done one of those as an adult, and there are things that I learned in that course that I still implement in my own personal driving.
I'm sure.
And it makes you a safer and a better driver. Helps you avoid tickets, things along those lines, because you're developing those good driving habits. So yeah, there are plenty of programs like that. And as Bernard was saying, it actually helps with the insurance rates as well.
Chris, as part of a court orders, if you're in court and you've had your license revoked or suspended, do courts sometimes, as part of your plan to get your license back, do they require in certain instances to go to some type of driving schools or courses?
Yes. The courts can impose a number of restrictions or criteria for an individual to get their license back. One of those, the most common, is the defensive driving course that we talked about. And there are several levels to that. There's level 1, which is typically a 4-hour class, and then there's level 2, which is usually an 8-hour class. The court can require an individual to complete that class as one of the criteria for them to get their license back. And there can be a number of other things as well.
Sure.
Usually with DUI cases, they have to take they have to submit to drug and alcohol monitoring, make sure they're not using any type of substances that would render their ability to operate a vehicle safely. There are a number of criteria that the court can impose. And honestly, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is coming up with creative solutions to help our clients to get their license back. So we've been able to come up with a number of different things and present those to the court as options to allow our client to fulfill in order to get their license back. And
so as long as you present it and the court approves it, then you go implement it, come back and show the completion.
Absolutely.
That's
we've done things, as out of the box as, having our client write an essay about, what their decisions mean and how it could have, turned out bad, things along those lines. And those are things that, while it may seem, funny or, outside of the box, it really helps people to think about the decisions that they're making as it relates to driving. And, from the attorney standpoint, obviously it's one of those things that you do in order to help facilitate a great result for your client.
Being creative.
Absolutely.
It's called lawyering. We got another question here, Chris, and we sure appreciate you guys tuning in for a few minutes. Waynette at Bonham, what exactly is SR22 insurance? I've heard people talk about it, but I'm unsure what it is.
That's a great question. SR22 insurance, that stands for safety responsibility. What that means is that's a type of insurance, or basically it's actually regular insurance, but it's what's called an additional rider that's put on by the insurance company. And it's generally required by the state for individuals who have indicated or who have demonstrated that they have a number of tickets or that they may be an unsafe driver. And basically what it does is it covers additional damages that may be caused and things along those lines. SR22 insurance is very expensive. And of course, part of the reason that it's so expensive is because it's meant to be punitive. Because, as I said before, individuals who are required to have it typically have had a lot of tickets, DUIs, things along those lines, and they have demonstrated to the state that they may not be the best or the safest driver. So if you're ever required to get SR22 insurance, it's usually because you have a long track record before it gets to that point.
A lot of points.
Now, one of the things that we've been able to successfully do is we've been able to fight that requirement. Because again, the state, based on the criteria and all those things, the state can impose that restriction. But we've been able to actually fight that.
You heard it here. This fella knows what he's talking about. If you have a suspended license, if you have a revoked license, you need to contact Christopher Burrell. Chris, how can folks get in touch with you?
The best way to reach us is you can call the office. Our office number is 205-202-5599. Or check this out, David. Bernard, I'm sorry.
I'm not insulted.
Actually, I saw David pop up.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
so,
right.
Hey, David. But another way to reach us is go to our website, ineedmylicense.com. We made it really simple because honestly, I talk to people all the time, and they would always say, "What do I need to do to get my driver's license?" I need my license. And so we said, hey, that's the website. So go to ineedmylicense.com, and we have a lot of information on there that will explain what needs to be done to get your license back, how we can help, all of those things. But if you still need to actually talk to us, or if you still have additional questions that may not be answered on the website, then give us a call at the office. We'll be more than happy to talk to you. Our staff is very knowledgeable. However, they cannot give legal advice, so you will always receive a phone call back from an attorney if you need actual legal advice for your specific situation.
Very good. Well, I want to thank you, Waynette, for putting the driver's license .com. ineedmylicense.com is on there. We'll put the rest of Chris's contact information. Hey, Martin, Martin, let's see. Martin will get in touch with you. I think he's got a potential case for you.
Okay.
That's excellent. Thank you guys for joining us today. Chris, awesome information. I sure appreciate you sharing your experience and expertise. Guys, this will conclude another episode of NOMBERG Law Live. This, of course, if you want to get in touch with Chris, we'll put his contact information in the comments section. We appreciate you guys stopping by for a little bit. Hope you have a great rest of your week. We're not going to be with you next week, which is July 4th week, but we'll see you back on July 10th. Take care, guys. Be well.